We begin, though, with wildfires burning from coast to coast in an unprecedented start to the wildfire season. British Columbia, Alberta, Saskatchewan, the Northwest Territories, Manitoba, Ontario, Quebec, Nova Scotia, and New Brunswick have all experienced serious fires. Over the month of May, roughly 2.7 million hectares of forest have gone up in flames. There are currently 211 fires burning in Canada. 82 of them are out of control. Minister of Emergency Preparedness Bill Blair joins me now. Minister, thanks for coming in.
Of course, David.
The fires are bad in Nova Scotia. They've been happening right across the country. Are you at a point where your resources are getting stretched too thin to deal with all of the demand?
Well, I think we're able to respond to all the requests for assistance that we're receiving from across the country, but I am concerned. The firefighters that have been deployed in every jurisdiction are getting tired, and their resources are stretched, and I want to make sure that they can do their job safely, and when people get fatigued, it becomes more difficult. We are also seeing now fires in Ontario and in Quebec. The situation in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Northwest Territories remains very significant, and of course what we're seeing in both New Brunswick and in Nova Scotia is concerning. And so, you know, our Government Operations Centre, our team has been working very hard to support our provincial and territorial partners, but it's been very challenging.
It's only June 1. And we're already at that level. I mean, the hottest parts of the summer are yet to come. I mean, how worried are you about what the next few weeks are going to look like?
Well, first of all, what we've seen just in the month of May, on average, the number of hectares burned in Canada in May is about 150,000. So far, in this just past month, 2.7 million hectares have gone up in flames. It's been an enormous challenge. And frankly, the prediction for the next 5 or 6 weeks, because of forest conditions and weather conditions that are predicted right across Canada, there are very many parts of the country that are at significant, extreme or high risk of continued wildfire activity, and that's why it's really important that we all work right now to make sure that we're prepared and the Canadians understand the risks and can take actions to keep themselves and their families safe.
We talked to Nova Scotia Premier Tim Houston on the show yesterday. He sent a letter, or official letter for requests for help that you have accepted, I understand. So how quickly and what kind of resources can Nova Scotia count on?
Yeah, we started moving on that actually several days ago. We anticipated some of the requirements. We've already been able to move some Canadian Armed Forces firefighting equipment, for example, to assist the city of Halifax. The Canadian Coast Guard has also had helicopters on the scene. There's a number of different federal agencies. Public Health Agency of Canada has been providing beds and other equipment through the National Strategic Stockpile. But we received that request for assistance, a formal request for assistance from the Premier yesterday morning. We were able to process that and approve it before the end of the day. When we're working with the Canadian Armed Forces, I think significant progress is now being made in making sure those resources can be delivered in a timely way.
Premier Houston, though, has expressed some frustration about speed in the past because they went through the experience of Fiona not that long ago and was worried about the pace of federal assistance in past experience. Is there any lessons learned and things you're going to do differently to ensure it's faster this time?
We do this in every province and territory in the country. We work very closely, and quite frankly, the emergency management capacity in various jurisdictions is not equal in every place. We work very closely, for example, in Alberta. The response there, I think, was very timely. Halifax has not had, Nova Scotia has not had significant experience with wildfire, and so, we are not able to deploy federal resources, call out the Army, for example, without a request from the province, and now that we've received that request, we'll act on it as quickly as possible.
Going back to the outlook for the next couple of weeks and how rough it is, I mean, you talk about what we normally get in May in Canada in a year. Alberta alone has dwarfed that with the wildfires they had. I mean, what extra steps do you need to take as a government to be ready for what may happen over the next month to 6 weeks as it gets even hotter and drier?
A really important question. One of the announcements actually Minister Wilkinson made this morning, I was with him, is we're investing very significantly in the training of additional firefighters. And one of the things that we've seen in Alberta, Saskatchewan, the Northwest Territories, now in Atlantic Canada and New Brunswick and Nova Scotia is that we need more firefighters who are trained and equipped in order to deal with the emerging threat. The people that are there, the people that are fighting most of those fires in Nova Scotia, for example, are volunteer firefighters. And so we're training hundreds of additional firefighters, and we're doing it as quickly as possible. We also are investing significantly in new equipment because we know they need hoses and other equipment. A lot of the requests we're getting from Nova Scotia, for example, are for vehicles and equipment that they don't readily have available, and so we're moving as quickly as possible, not just to acquire that to deal with the fires we're having today, but recognizing that the challenge presents before us over the next several weeks and even in the coming years, because we're seeing an increase in the frequency and severity of these events year after year, and we know we have to make significant investments, and we're investing in those things. Most importantly, we're working with our provincial and territorial partners and working with communities. I've been talking to mayors across the country to build greater resilience and preparation, and we want to make sure the Canadians know what to do.
Right, but on that point of the frequency and the severity, it's floods, it's hurricanes, it's derechos, it's tornadoes, and it's fires. And each time it's provinces request the Army, it seems, to come in. And we know about the capacity challenges in the armed forces. I mean, with where we know things are going with climate change and the frequency of these things, isn't that time to take a serious look at sort of a federal emergency response institution like FEMA, perhaps, in the United States, that isn't the military, because they've got a lot on their plate as it is.
Historically in this country, we have called upon the military, and one of their important functions in the Canadian Armed Forces is what we call domestic response.
Yeah.
They have always been there for us, and you know, we've called them out during the pandemic.
But should they keep being there for us,
well,
or do we need to find
well,
another organization to do that?
Well, I think we need to continue to invest in their capacity and capability to respond to these requests for assistance, but we're making other investments because the military response is not always the right one. So training additional firefighters, for example, not Canadian Armed Forces firefighters, but firefighters in Indigenous communities, Métis communities, and in provinces and territories across the country. Investing in equipment for those communities so that they have the resources they need so they don't have to call upon firefighters. And we're also investing significantly in civil society, in the Canadian Red Cross, the Salvation Army, and you know, the Search and Rescue Volunteer Association of Canada and St. John's. We've been making significant investments in those organizations to build capacity in those organizations so that they can be there and support. And so it's the Canadian Red Cross, for example, that's staffing and manning a lot of those evacuation centers and helping facilitate those evacuation centers. So it's about building up capacity, not just in the Canadian Armed Forces, but in all of the ways in which we can respond.